War and speech. The English language is a story of brutal conquests. English words are, in an English word, weird. Most native speakers take the many eccentricities, quirks, and seemingly arbitrary rules in stride. But for those learning English as a second language, our mother tongue can be tongue-twistingly torturous. For instance, if GH can be P as in hiccup, if OUGH can be O as in dough, if TTE can be T as in gazette, if EIGH can be A as in neighbor, if EAU can be O as in plateau, wouldn't this be spelled like this? Sure, to us it may seem silly to assign genders to nouns for no apparent reason, but English is one of the few languages that doesn't. It's interesting, however, that while no other language is quite like ours, English is the voracious sum of many other pilfered languages. In fact, the story of English is a story of savage seizures and aggressive appropriations. English, Old English, started out as essentially a kind of Celtic stew. The Celts were the earliest inhabitants of the British Isles. A few Celtic words are used in modern English, mainly place names such as Thames or London. But this form of English is a far cry from what we speak today. For instance, in sentences, the verb came first, or came first the verb. Despite the differences, we still use Celtic from time to time. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, for instance, is Celtic counting. Hickory, dickory, dock is, in itself, a form of Celtic's 8, 9, and 10. Let us introduce the first of the invaders, the Romans, who, in 43 BC through the 5th century, brought in roughly 200 Latin words. Most of these 200 words were coined by Roman merchants and soldiers, such as wine, candle, belt, and wall. Next came the Germanic tribes, the Angles, Saxons, and the Jutes in 449 AD. They pushed the Celts into Wales and Scotland, while one group migrated to the Brittany coast of modern-day France. Their descendants still speak the Celtic language of Breton today. Many Anglo-Saxon texts survive from this era, telling of wild battles and heroic journeys. Approximately one-third of their vocabulary survives today. Like the Romans, they were a practical people, so many of their words are basic everyday words like earth, house, food, sing, night, and sleep. By 597 AD, Christian missionaries spread through the land, converting the pagans to the Catholic Christian faith. They also managed to convert the English language by introducing hundreds of new Latin words. Many of these words, unsurprisingly, had to do with religion, like altar, school, and monk. Other words were again everyday practical words such as fork, spade, tower, rose, and spider. Up next, the Vikings. These raiders brought thousands of new words with them, such as anger, freckle, reindeer, silver, and oddly smile, a word not usually associated with the vanquishing Viking hordes. And whereas Old English had those wacky genders assigned to words, the Vikings would have none of this, and so now we have none of it either. Apparently, the Vikings liked England so much that they stayed there for 200 years, controlling the northeast of the country. That is, until King Alfred used the English language as a tactical weapon of sorts, using it to develop a sense of identity amongst the English in order to push the Vikings out. With two languages fitfully coexisting in one land, English and Norse words ultimately forged an uneasy alliance, becoming the English language's first synonyms. For example, Norse words such as anger, bask, ill, and skill now had English counterparts such as wrath, bathe, sick, and craft. Now on to the Normans, who really loved French. In 1066, at the Battle of Hastings, William the Conqueror, a Norman, fulfilled the promise of his surname and conquered England, inaugurating the era of Middle English. The Normans ruled for several centuries, and before long, English had picked up 10,000 new words. Most of the new words had to do with power, like crown, castle, trader, banquet, peasant, beauty, and parliament. Then, starting in the 16th century, it became fashionable to pepper sentences with Latin to make one seem more sophisticated, resulting in the induction of words such as fundamental, definition, crucified, and conclusion into our language. Today, these words seem business as usual, but at the time, these Latin-based words were viewed as the height of pretension. This started a sort of language war, with New English gaining thousands of new words and vying with Older English to define the same things. This allowed the language to become more nuanced, with varying shades of formality. For instance, help is English, aid is French, and assist is Latin. In addition to giving us new words, the Norman conquest also resulted in the creation of two classes: the Norman aristocracy, who spoke and wrote in French, and the common people, who spoke English in their everyday lives. For instance, a cow, sheep, swine, or deer, which are English words, would be killed to be turned into beef, mutton, pork, or venison, which are French words, because typically the English-speaking workers killed the animals for the generally more affluent French-speaking diners. Next came the explorers, who, in addition to bringing back exotic spices and goods from the New World, also brought back words such as skeleton, enthusiasm, bazaar, chocolate, carnival, jar, coffee, and tomato, or tomato. This ushered in a time of incredible English literacy, the establishment of Oxford and Cambridge universities, as well as the printing press, which was introduced in 1476, opening a door for the Renaissance, the King James Bible, and Shakespeare. During the 1700s, the Age of Enlightenment, discoveries in the fields of medicine, astrology, engineering, and botany stretched the English language further. This also became the age of dictionaries, rules and regulations in grammar, and correct spelling. Samuel Johnson published his dictionary in 1755, and since he did not like all words in the English language, he left out some common everyday words such as shabby, fuss, and bang. Greek even joined the party in the 19th century, becoming synonymous with science, which is why many of our complex scientific terms seem, well, Greek to us. English is a sort of mutt, in that few other languages could contain so much foreign vocabulary within just one sentence, with a typical phrase often containing words from Old English, Norse, Latin, and French. Which brings us now to, perhaps, the final invasion to plague our language. Emojis. Yep, emojis. Our generation's form of cave paintings, taking our language and all language back to square one. It's an attempt to keep meaning intact despite the pace and constriction of modern technology. But the English language has been growing and transforming at a dizzying rate ever since the Industrial Revolution, with new words coined along with new inventions and ideas, such as centigrade, caffeine, miniskirts, websites, gobstoppers, and weirdos. But if the last 2,000 years or so is any indication, English will merely absorb this new form of communication and move on, voraciously consuming any form of language to suit its overriding purpose, to express by any means necessary. In fact, English's biggest foe may prove to be French. The latest projection is that French will be spoken by 750 million people by the year 2050, making it the most spoken language in the world ahead of English and Mandarin. But English is a survivor, mainly due to its shameless ability to steal, absorb, and roll with the punches. After all, that which does not kill English only makes it stronger and stranger.